Okay, well, thank you everyone. Thanks for being game for this kind of bonkers marathon day that we planned, and it's been going
And thanks
swimmingly.
to some of the people who've been here
Yeah,
all
and
day.
we've got
Thank
some-
you, amazing. Thank you.
Yay, us.
Yeah. Russell will have the recording. This will live on. Okay, so for our last session here, a kind of moment to reflect on everything we've talked about today. I thought that it might be interesting if everyone could take a few moments and think of thinking about everything we've talked about today and the future that we want to build, that we've all alluded to or spoken to very directly. If you could identify one person, one specific type of person, scholar or someone in the academy or around the academy, one type of person, and then a specific piece of advice, practical advice that you would give that person. So this could be an undergraduate student, a graduate student, your dean, your president, or a colleague.
Your trustee.
Yeah, I mean, okay, maybe let's hold that one in advance.
We're all gonna
But
do
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
but
not that.
and I'm gonna and it's okay if 4 of us end up speaking to associate professors. That's okay. We don't have to cover the range, but let's just see what comes of this. So thinking of who would you, if you had the opportunity to say, given everything we talked about today, hey, here's something you can do today or tomorrow to start helping us move toward this better future. That's your challenge. And I want you, and then we can just take it spontaneously whenever you come up with your idea. And maybe they'll build off one another, or maybe they'll all be the same. It's totally fine. But we'll use that as a kind of closing note, but before we're joined by our executive vice provost, Mary McCann, who's great, who's been absorbing all this, I'm sure, because she's been to several of our events.
Yeah.
She'll slot right in.
I can go first because it's so easy for me. It would be an undergraduate student. I truly think that, and one of my takeaways today is that we always need to be looking 5 years ahead. What do we want? What do we want? And for me, it's the undergraduates who have recently arrived and everything's possible for them. And it's to put no impediments in their way, to find them early and to just turbocharge them with everything that they can do and make them realize that interdisciplinary study is in their hands. They'll reach impediments, but they can find strong mentors, and they need to have this. They need to know from the start that they have the agency to make those connections and to bring us forward with support into the places we need to go.
Great. Thanks, Jeffrey.
I think building on Pat's observation earlier about protecting the vulnerable, I think my department chair and other senior leadership about how we can best protect those faculty members who are part of all of our departments who are not on the tenure track, don't have tenure, are often contractual, and have very few of the academic freedoms that we often take for granted. So like, especially at this moment in time, where, with funds disappearing, grants disappearing, they are, I think, going to be the most vulnerable, and yet we need to figure out better ways, stronger ways to protect them.
So I think mine, I'm having a hard time sort of narrowing down the person, again, enough that I want to give this piece of advice to, but I'm going to give it right now to any faculty member, but also graduate students, anybody on campus who is doing research, advanced research in a particular field. Keep doing that research, but also learn to tell the story of that research, right? And it's in the telling of the story that the public impact for what might seem to be a very niche question can be built and can be made more broad.
Thanks, Kathleen.
I have advice for senior faculty, which is where I sometimes think change happens the least. And that is focus on humility and use your power for the benefit of the future instead of for your own foundation.
Thanks, Linda.
I have two roles in mind, and so I think I'm going to just go with the one that I think might have the most impact. I'm not sure. So I can't. It's hard for me to separate the person from the role. So right now, the person would be our current chancellor at UNC. And I've actually said these words to him, so I'll be able to say what that you as the leader, as the appointed, so the elected leader of our campus, you have the opportunity to have the most impact and to have a great deal of impact on our campus. Trust your faculty to support you in doing what is best for the university, so that we're all accountable to the same university. And just and so lean into that. That's yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Pat?
To my surprise, I might also go with senior faculty. And I think what I would want to say is, this is your time to shine. We humanists are not as good as we should be at making the arguments for people outside our fields about the importance of what we do. We study narrative and culture making, and we are very good at critiquing it. We are less good at making the pitch. And I think your time to shine means the university, everybody at the university needs a better argument for the value of what we do, not critical thinking. It's so insulting to everyone. Not we're making good citizens. We don't have enough evidence for that right now. But what is the value of what we do? And we should put everything else aside until we can make that argument powerfully enough that it's useful ammunition for the leadership of the university.
So I would speak to, I think, the group we haven't really talked about today, which is the staff. I feel like we need to be attuned to the expertise that's all around us, and the staff in various roles, whether academic staff or administrative staff, have a great deal of depth in their understanding of how universities operate. And they have agency in being leaders in their sphere. And if we're going to get through this, we're going to have to cultivate a culture of leadership at every level of the institution. We can't have everybody waiting for somebody else to come to be the panacea. Yes, the highest level, the medium level, and every level has to be attuned to the challenges we currently face, and that I think means a commitment to being intentional every day about putting your best judgment, your best integrity, your best ideas into practice in the next thing you're going to do.
Thanks, Chris. That was pretty efficient.
That's pretty good. We didn't even give us time. Maybe that's the secret.
That was the key.
Well, what other thoughts do we have as we bring this day to a close?
We could also expand too.
Yes.
Well, I thought okay, never mind. No.
It doesn't have to be rapid fire.
Okay.
Never got to
Meredith,
ask
yeah.
things like
Yeah,
that.
Yeah, Mary, let's go back to Mary.
Yeah.
Let's all listen to Meredith.
You can-
So my question from earlier still stands because I love the way that students have popped up really meaningfully across these conversations today. I love everything you've said, Jeffrey, about that this all starts with the undergraduate. It has to start at that level as we move forward. And we are also, it's not just about teaching students how to be humanistic in whatever ways that means, in better ways, but it is about this advocacy in this moment we're in right now, which that phrase, oh my God. But so I really want to hear what everyone thinks about. It's beyond innovative pedagogy. It's like more like organizing, right? What is it? How do we cultivate in our undergraduates not just how to be more effective in their classroom learning, but how to demand what they deserve from their humanities instructors in particular, and then their faculty more broadly, because they, in my experience, when undergraduates come to school, they're still in that moment of like not really being able to articulate why they're taking that English class, or that history class. So like there's something that's even before like hitting a good teacher that needs to happen. And what is our role on all these multiple levels that you're mentioning in sort of cultivating that and building that sort of coalition amongst people who want to learn and who are at that age, right?
So, as has become my custom, and you will recognize this move, I tell stories, right, that lead up to sort of kind of answering the question. The story that I have at this point is this. I was supposed to teach a graduate seminar one semester a few years back that, for reasons, didn't have enough enrollment in it. And so at the 11th hour, I was asked if I would switch my teaching for that semester to teach basically the Foundations of Literary Studies class, the introduction for English majors in our English department. And it's a class I hadn't taught in a dozen years, right? There had been a lot of time that had passed. And so I thought about, okay, well, what is it that I am going into a room of primarily sophomores, but not all sophomores, many of them thinking about an English major, but many of them engineers who have that one elective left over and just want to read something for a while. What is it that I am going to do in this class that's going to convey to them why they're in it? Like, what is the goal of, like, Foundations of Literary Study? What is literary studies to begin with? And so the entire structure of the class is like, why do your professors read and write the way they do? What does all of this mean? Why would you want to read and write this way? Why do you want to learn this? And what good will it do you later on? And it became this really, it was one of my favorite teaching experiences I've had in the last 20 years, precisely because this group of really super motivated students who were motivated by very different things were able to go like, oh, okay, so if I am able to figure out how to write a paper that isn't just the 5-paragraph essay, but that really unpacks an idea, I can then take that skill set back to my engineering classroom and I can figure out how to, like, they were able to figure out for themselves what learning this one weirdo way of reading and writing could do for them later on. And I think finding a way to empower students to recognize that that's hopefully what they're after in their classes is to think about not like, I am learning this so that I can model myself after you, but I am learning this because that thing will help me do something else later on, right? And but figuring out how to work with them to get them ready to know that that's what they should be asking for, I think is, I think you've hit like one of the key challenges for undergraduate education going forward.
I want to add on to what you just said as something that my husband specializes in helping high schools teach math with joy and humanity. And one of the things that he always says, which I think can be applied to exactly what you're talking about, is don't teach students things before they know what the purpose of the thing is. And so if it's possible to motivate the 5-paragraph essay with what is required to be an engineer, or what is required to bring that, this is what it's for, up front, it might be even better. Yeah.
Exactly.
Here's something I think about a lot, and maybe it's on the other end of the spectrum. It's the, so ASU has every kind of student. We have a honors college where the students have the grades to go to Columbia if they would want to, but they go there. They're awesome. They're gonna be all right. I'm always on their thesis. Blah blah blah. I don't worry about them so much. The students I do worry about are a group that we gather. When they declare. You have to declare your major before you come to ASU in order to get into advising. And students choose various things for good reasons and bad reasons. But we sweep through demographically who the new humanities majors are and usually pull a group of about 50 of them where they have something in their background that suggests that the first year is going to be a challenge for them to make it through. Like demographically speaking, statistically speaking, we expect persistence in year 1 is going to be an issue. Invite them to campus 2 weeks early, tell them they're part of our early start cohort, which they are, give them $2,000 because they probably can't work during that time, put them in a dorm room, use that 2 weeks to meet with them intensely, teach them how to use office hours, do basics of studying. Notice sometimes that they don't have computers, so I always buy 1 or 2 computers for these students. Like, give them everything that they're going to need to succeed, but also bond them as a cohort and make sure that they are there watching out for each other, and that part of it too is connecting with professors. And then throughout the year, because I've been able to get some philanthropic money to keep it going, invite them to dinners before a lecture, and then they go to a lecture, and very often we have special seats reserved for them and do a call out to them. And the idea is that too often in life we get obsessed with telling people how fortunate they are to be with us. So wrong, right? Tell students how fortunate we are to have them with us, right? How fortunate we are to be able to move them forward. And the one other thing I'll say about it, and this does get at a difference between humanities and sciences, at least at my university, our humanities students tend to not, in general, have been the overachievers in high school because everybody steers them into the sciences. Oh, you're so good at math, you should go into STEM. Oh, you're so bright, biological sciences. It's the students who need a little bit more, who have a lot of potential, but maybe it didn't get realized yet. They come to humanities, but I think it's our obligation to make sure that they know that we see in them the potential to be like anyone else, that there's nothing that's going to hold them back. So this is something I think about a lot. How do we, the ones especially who made the choice to major in humanities, how do we make sure that they succeed at the same rate as every other student?
And this might be related a little bit to something you were saying, Kristen, too, is cultivating a sense of the intellectual life of what it means to be a human being. And giving opportunities in your classroom, figuring out how to, like you were doing, give them an experience where they can feel that energy that comes from a new idea, from discovery, from playing with something they weren't familiar with, and begin to nurture a sense of what are we doing here? What kind of life am I gonna live? And I feel like there's a deep sense of purpose that we as human beings need to find in our lives. And I think when it gets filled in with other things, I think that's partly what's happening politically, is there's a sense of community and purpose and meaning around a way of interacting that is highly toxic, as opposed to a way of interacting that is tying in and tapping into to our best selves and who we are and who we want to become. And part of that means that, in high school too, we've got to help. It can't just be about how well you did on this test or that. I mean, my own kids, it's like, I get it. You figure out how to give the teacher what they want, and you're gonna get the thing. But that's no life.
Exactly.
That's no life to live, and college should, at its best, is the time, when you get to figure out what it means to have an intellectual life and to live a purposeful life. That's, Mary Oliver I go back to in the poem, The Summer Day. What will you do with your one wild and precious life? That is the question that has to animate our universities.
I have a question inspired by that, which is, what should we be help me with this word, it's the end of the day. Proliferating, yes, on our campuses right now. And the reason I thought about that is, and I wonder if anyone knows sort of this background, just about every university has a first-year seminar. That's what I'm talking. So these kinds of mechanisms that someone thought about, hey, how do we do some of the things? I think there were some of the questions you're raising. The first-year seminar, I think there was this having at dormitory, sort of a
living learning
experience and that sort of thing. So what do we need for this now? These times. I think I coined that phrase earlier today. These times, which as opposed to the before times. What should we? We don't have to answer it now, but I think this is what I would like to put forward that comes out of this conversation today. What should we be proliferating on our campuses that will promote this whatever it is that you just described, Chris? Anything that Chris has described today. How do we proliferate?
The life of the mind.
The life of the mind.
And that question helps us then really focus on if I know what we're trying to proliferate, what's my role in that?
Yes.
In my specific position.
Exactly.
Right.
Then I understand that better.
Seeing that in the context of a moment in which being thoughtful seems to be a terrible disadvantage. And demonstrating to students the value of being thoughtful.
Yes.
I didn't want to follow Mary Oliver with papers of secession, but I'm going to. I have found that the disinformation in the world has really changed my teaching in a way I think it's made it much better. I used to teach about the Civil War, starting with the assumption that students would come into the room agreeing that there was a causal relationship between enslavement and the Civil War. And in so many ways, I've had to slow way down. And I have had to spend 90 minutes reading one secession document and asking the students, asking them to slow down and asking them to understand why paying attention to the details in that document could really help them, could shift their worldview, not recruit them to any cause, because God forbid, there's nothing to be gained from that, but understanding the value in paying attention to the details can be incredibly empowering, and it can be a very beautiful gift, even if it's over something as ugly as
I found the same thing. And all semester, all I've been talking about, all I've been asking for, and all I've been asking students to bring into the classroom is this a supported conclusion, or is it just I've lost my word too, an assertion? Is it an assertion or is it a supported conclusion? And then when we talk about what is the support for the conclusion, the question is, how true do you think that is, or how would you know whether or not that is true? And I had a student, and then I asked them, so in the week since we last met, did you run across any assertions or any supported conclusions in your life that you'd like to talk about? And I did have one student come in and say, I just realized that everything every politician has ever said to me was an assertion. And I thought, done, my job is done. My job is done. And I want to add to this question that you asked, how do we reconcile the strange and unbecoming tension between we need to get our students into jobs and we need to get our students into the rich intellectual life. And I realize that this is not necessarily a contradiction, and I think that these two things exist in equal challenge in STEM fields and in humanities fields. But I do feel like a lot of students feel like it's in conflict. And is that part of what we need to be doing in our campuses right now?
Yes.
I think- yes.
I think we would probably all agree
Yeah.
on that. I mean, one of the challenges that we've had on campuses, particularly at undergraduate levels, is that majors that are not named after career paths
Yes.
Yeah.
have a tendency to be like, why on earth would you major in that? What are you going to do with a degree in French?
What do you tell
right?
your
How are you
grandmother?
French in the world, right? And finding ways to really convey that intercultural competence, right, is a massive benefit on the job market in a whole lot of different ways, is really crucial. But we, again, this comes back to like doing the research, telling the story of the research. We do a great job of delivering education. We don't do such a good job of delivering the story or telling the story of why we're educating our students in this way and what they and their parents might understand that they're going to come away with if they...
The job market needs to learn those lessons too.
But I think the job, I don't know,
Yeah.
well, job market, maybe, that may be a different thing than what I'm about to say, which has to do with the people who are running corporations and who are hiring people. They want people who have this sort of holistic approach to the world. They can teach them the specificity of their, technologies or, whatever their technical core is, but they do want the people that we're talking about who come through the humanities. And I think the best advocates for that would be our alums. So this is actually a conversation I've been having with my dean, and he's on it. I mean, we've been we just did a survey that was done 10 years ago about the value of the liberal arts thing. And so, but his new take on it is, okay, we're going to do it 10 years later. We get to have a longitudinal perspective. And then bringing in, my idea was to convene this sort of advisory council of alums and to help us to, how do we tell this story and to get them to tell the story. So he's going to put those two ideas together, I think. But I really think it is about getting the stories out in terms of what are, what corporations, what they want, who they want to hire. And they want our graduates.
So, so Jeffrey, at dinner, you told a beautiful story about an alumni who went on and into a different career path, running a company, and bringing them back. And so we published. So all I was to say is, I think that you're like all the things that you're describing that you've been doing on your campus are things that we would love to see modeled right across so many others. We did a report on the career. What do we call it? Report on English majors' career preparation and outcomes. Out of the MLA that we published last year, and bringing alumni to campus was like one of the #1 easiest ways of closing the gap in understanding and having an impact on students' understanding about where they might go with the major that they have. The other thing is, we talk a lot about, we have a Mellon grant to fund projects about career preparation, like we call it the 3 R's, recruitment, retention, and career readiness, right, little c. But we like to talk about it as career-mindedness, right? So like a lot of faculty, in our experience, have deep resistance to talk about career readiness, right? Like that's not why. We're not a professional school, right? Which is fine. But there's so many, so through the grants that we're making through the Mellon Pathways STEP grants, we have been working with the National Humanities Alliance to run surveys of all the different kinds of interventions that people are doing through the grants that they're receiving, right? So they get $10,000 and they can do like a recruitment thing before, for incoming high school students, seniors, where they can, change a class, a little bit of one course by like just a module to see what the impact that will be on a sophomore who's thinking about majors, or whole classes, right? What we found in the early results of that study is that even just the smallest addition of attention to your regular courses about like NACE competencies and how they relate to the skills that you're picking up in your classes, or just being mindful about that we're teaching you content, but we're also teaching you sort of an array of approaches to thinking and writing that can be relevant in X, Y, and Z kinds of careers. Very small interventions that don't require, our faculty to really go out and, a lot of times they're resistant because they're like, well, that's not what I did, so I don't know, I can't speak to it, right? But they actually can, and we can train them. So I just want to encourage, like, very small interventions can have outsized impact in making our majors better understand why what they're learning is relevant to outside the world, while still maintaining the character and integrity of, if you care about disciplines or if you care about interdisciplinarity, but maintaining the character of like what that classroom experience could be.
I'm one of 5 faculty at in the humanities that teach in our English department, which is actually an interdisciplinary school with 6 programs, a required course called Your Degree in the World. It's a 1-credit course, 36 students in it. I love it. It's one of my favorite courses, but this is the one we were talking about last night at dinner. Students leave the course less certain what they're going to do in their future, but more confident to live in that uncertainty because they feel like actually they can do a lot of things. And I bring in 2 sets of alumni that I think are just as important for them. Older alumni who've done well. The one that we were talking about last night at dinner, one of my English majors went on to become a vice president of marketing at Waymo, which is a self-driven car that we have in Phoenix. And she's like, when I was an English major studying Shakespeare, there were no robots driving cars. But now look, this is what I'm doing. And they love that she was ready through her storytelling to go. But I think the most impactful are actually the younger alumni who come in and talk about, well, when I was sitting there, I had no idea what I was going to do, but look, I'm doing next, look, I'm doing. It really helps them. And the one other thing I'll say too, because I'm a dean and fundraising is a part I do, when I bring in the older alumni, of course they're willing to support, be business connections and all of that. So I actually think integrating career talk into what we do is great, and keeping Chris in mind, I think about a lot. If we focus too much on jobs, we lost. I mean, the best way to get a job probably isn't an English major. It's probably something that leads directly. We don't want them to focus on jobs. We want them to focus on careers and a good life. A career is made up of the 8 to 12 jobs you hold over your lifetime. A good life is what that adds up to. You have to be satisfied with what you're doing, and that's just as important.
Yeah. I think that bit about the career being made up of 8 to 12 jobs that you hold over your life is really, really crucial, because this is, again, coming out of the American Academies of Arts and Sciences and the Humanities Indicators projects that they've been doing. Humanities students are better positioned to continue learning over the course of their lives than are many other fields that impart a whole lot of knowledge that is good today, but that 5 years from now is going to be outdated. Right, and so finding ways to help students in the context of their studies recognize that yes, you're learning stuff today, but also what you're learning is how you're going to keep learning for the rest of your life.
I think one way in which, and I appreciate about this conversation how we have been on the mountaintop and then we get the algae and the weeds. I mean, so this is, I'm in the algae and the weeds, but we are out of step. Humanities departments are out of step with the rest of the university in terms of internships and in terms of a sense of a movement forward for students. At the University of Michigan, everybody else has well, in your sophomore year, you do this in the summer, and in your junior year, you do this. There is a program. And faculty don't seem to recognize that, and they don't seem to understand how it leaves the humanities students feeling adrift, and like everybody else has momentum. So we started the Culture Corps, which is some paid summer internships for students in cultural organizations in the region. As a way to kind of respond to that, but we also opened it up. It's not just for humanities majors, and it's interesting because these other students are more entrepreneurial and they're looking for opportunities in the way that our students aren't necessarily, but we're hoping that as it becomes part of the culture. But I do feel like it's a very important missing point in our work to bring more humanists along into our majors and to have them really appreciate their experience.
The impact, so I had a faculty member tell me this story of their student who they encourage over and over again to go to the career fair. So the student went, and the student walked into the career fair, and there were two signs, and one said STEM and pointed to the left, and one said business and pointed to the right. So they took the only path that was open to them, which is the one out the door, right?
Yeah.
So I would go back to, I can't remember who mentioned like having a greater, like building greater capacity across all of our faculty of understanding how the university works. Because really, like without a like clear sense of the importance of admissions and quotas that could be attached to admissions, a real sense of advising and how advisors might be directing students away from humanities majors out of, well, like good intention, because they've heard the same misinformation that their parents have heard, that they don't get jobs, right? It's not true. You know, I have two daughters in college, one's a bio major, one's an English major, and the fact is statistically they're likely to have about the same salary coming out and the same chance of a job. But that's not the perception we have, because one's STEM and one's not. But I think that we have to become more involved in our institutions, and a lot of it's not the stuff we were trained for, right? We weren't trained to like go talk to career services and make sure that that sign says, oh, and also humanities majors or whatever, right? But we do have an obligation to do it.
Well, that's been a thread that's run throughout the day. This like we need to be more responsible to get to know these institutions that we're a part of, because it's all too easy. So like, well, that's not like I just doing my thing, and that doesn't concern me unless I'm on like one very small service, committee or something. But to take a more holistic and in-depth sense of where we are, where we work, and then realize we're part of that, and therefore part of the change.
And that's how we stand together as well, I think, more effectively.
It's a very precious space, the university. And we somehow find ways to make this precious space miserable.
It's our time.
I'm sorry.
Is that the last word?
I thought the papers of secession were better.
So I think it is the recognition that we have to take care of it and us together. And when you think of the work of a university as community building, as culture work, which is really what it is, then I think more of our humanist colleagues can get on board with that endeavor. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build community. How would you connect with a local community group and work across the organization to make them successful? That's what, talking about imagining America, that's part of what you learn to do there. Part of the heart of humanities work is that. But yet we don't do that with our own organization, take stewardship of this very special and precious place.
Well, that should be the last word.
This is a good word.
So I'm going to ask our Executive Vice Provost, Mary McKay, to come up and offer some final remarks. And I just want to say a quick word about Mary and the gratitude I have for Mary and for all the incredible support she's given to the Center for the Humanities and the Office of the Provost in general. And I think a lot of the things that we just talked about today are some of the things that Mary has been trying to do with the strategic plan, which is, it's a genre, but Here and Next, which is our strategic plan, is really invested in some of the work that we've been talking about, the community and the collaborative and all those things. So Mary supported this gathering, as she has other things that we've done. So I'm immensely grateful, and very grateful also that you could spare some minutes from your very, very busy day to come and just kind of conclude our session. And so thanks, Mary.
So I only heard like the last 20 minutes, so in addition to you being very smart, it's also very comforting to me that as an academic that colleagues can get together and talk about how we can actually improve every day what we do. on behalf of the disciplines we represent and the students that we interact with. So that was lovely to sit in the back. And I said, oh, if only I had the time to be with you all day. I guess that I just want to tie the work that you have done together to our ambitions at WashU. You know, the notion being that we do have this strategic plan that is really attempting to have us move forward together, to really bring our expertise, to invite our students to think about how do we transform this world through our scholarship, through our investment in our students, our faculty, and our staff, and our connection to community. Those are kind of the 3 pillars of our strategic plan. And you've modeled that beautifully in just the few minutes that I've sat in the back of the room. So for that, I'm immensely grateful. I also think that what I've heard our provost say, and I just want to say to this group, particularly the WashU group, is when we talk about that vision, there isn't like a little asterisk next to it that says, well, in times of good, right? When things are really calm, we'll think about that vision. And that isn't how we're talking about that vision for Washington University. You know, in times of turmoil, in times of volatility, I actually think we matter more. But I do actually think that we need to collaborate better. The Academy is a rich place of ideas and debate, and sometimes really good collaboration, and then sometimes actually even more silos in a small or medium-sized place like this. And so I hope that you've modeled how people can really work together. I hope you're weathering these turbulent times. This is not the easiest time I've ever had being an academic, and that's like completely an understatement. But that you have real support at your institutions and here at this institution as we navigate really pretty complicated times, and that we can come out of this being recognizable for the institutions that we are, but actually maybe even better, because these times really call us to pull together like never before. So thank you so much. Stephanie, thank you for the nice words, because I have nice words right back at all that you do, and I appreciate that you've been gathering all day, so thank you. Thank you.
So this was amazing. Thanks to everybody who stayed throughout the day. If there's anyone left on Zoom, thank you. And, you know,
Thank you,
we
Zoomers.
did it. Yeah.